Did you just say facial?
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger,
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics.
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today. It's
It's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift. Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Andy,
Roger, how you doing?
yeah, I'm doing good. Better than some people. You know, let's just call him an acquaintance. Had a chat to me today, and it was more of a plea for help. And the conversation got a little bit private, pretty much saying that, Roger, I'm going crazy. I can't access YouPorn. And it's something that I wasn't really aware of, that you messaged me actually a few weeks ago, saying that the Australian government essentially is made some policy decisions around proof of age for adult websites. And a lot of these platforms, including Pornhub or YouPorn, all these places that are aggregation sites, have taken the stance of, just not cooperating. So you need to pretty much go through an ID verification process to access these sites now in Australia. Who would have thought?
Do you know what the best thing about this topic is?
Yeah.
It's that a good cohort of at least 50% of the population are like very strongly against this, right? But none of them want to raise their head above the parapet and say, what are you doing to my porn, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, no one wants to be that guy, right? And I've thought about this in the context of, like, our politicians, right? Because this is like, for all other dimensions of this, other than the actual topic, it's ripe for, like, opposition, right? It's ripe to say, oh, the government's terrible, it's overreach, it's like nanny state, like all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But when you think about it, which side of politics is going to, like, prosecute this case? Like,
That's where you need the sex party.
True. But then even then, they're kind of like all about rights of sex workers, right? So it's very hard to navigate.
Very hard, hey? So, look, I think like going back to this, my acquaintance, and obviously that's not where the conversation ended, it's just that's where it started. And it became clear to me that this was having a real, like a real life impact on him. He was, his day was like, he was just so deflated and upset. And he was saying, it's like affecting his mental health, not being able to access his porn. And you might ask yourself, well, what's the big deal? This is just what you need to do to protect minors and all this business. And porn is a destructive force, which I want to talk about later. But he's also a tinfoil kind of guy, right? So the last thing that he wants to do is give his facial image or his, ID documents to some porn platform, right? He's just not going to do that. And he's getting desperate now, I think he was saying is like, it's just really affecting it's part of his daily routine to look up these porn sites, right? And to, that's his smoke break, and it's easy to judge people like that. But I think when you look at the stats, like you said, a huge percentage of people access these sites, and a shocking amount, I think like over 25%, 1 in 4 people access it daily, right? Like, I mean, this is big stuff, right? Like you're really making it people's lives a bit difficult here. And we had this conversation about what would you rather, this episode around what's worse, or, what happens if you take away all the porn. And this is kind of what's happened, right? And we'll see what happens, because he was saying, like, I'm thinking about buying a magazine or something, so I think when there's a will, there's a way. But unfortunately, when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's there are actual real impacts, and I think to men as well. Like, I mean, I can't imagine that you take a society that's addicted to these sites and then cutting them off is going to make for a bunch of happy campers.
Did you just say facial?
Did I?
All right. I want to share some quotes from the last couple of weeks. Old school Foxtel boxes make a return as Pornhub ban drives Australian teenagers back to fashion TV.
What did I tell you? I called it.
Former Zoo magazine staff get the gang back together after desperate nation puts up the Nork signal.
These are obviously satire article headlines, right?
Yes. This is not satire. This is real. VPN services have exploded in popularity after Pornhub and other adult sites cut Australian users off from all nude content.
So ladies, if your partner has suddenly, mysteriously, you see a NordVPN icon on the iPad, you know what's happening.
All right, so let's maybe talk this one through. So I think this is going to be the sleeper issue of the next couple of years, right? And I think it's going to be the sleeper issue because I actually think it's more than just pornography, right? It connects in with a whole agenda related to like the internet, right? And freedom on the internet. Freedom to navigate the internet in the way that we kind of grew up navigating the internet, which is like it's the Wild West. Like
the e-safety commissioner back then, hey?
Yeah, well, you know, and I don't think people like that side of it, right? I don't think people like the idea that someone is coming into your life and restricting, like, as an adult, right, as restricting your use of what was famously like this liberating kind of place, right? Now, obviously, the flip side of it being a really liberating place is that there was a lot of really dodgy, dark shit that happened on the internet, right? And over time, it like regulation has kind of crept and become a bit more tightly controlled, right? And maybe some of that is appropriate, but like I think people are more like among, well, certainly the guy that you sound like the guy that you described sounds like it's more a principles-based thing, right? It's not like a question of, do I think it's right that this stuff's regulated in any way, as opposed to like, is it like reasonable for government to step in and like, there's a libertarian angle to this that I think people get really triggered by, and it's the same kind of, you know, sentiments that I think triggered like the whole stuff when, you know, during COVID with vaccines and this idea that you've got to be forced to have a vaccine. It's like this reaction to overreach of state control. So I actually think you can hold with this particular topic. You can hold a position that doesn't seem reconcilable, but you can actually agree with regulation and control of access to this content in principle, but then still oppose actually doing it. And I think I'm probably empathetic to that position. So like I totally see why you might regulate this stuff. Like I don't have to be convinced of the merits of tightening control, and even for adults, let alone people under the age of 18. But yet at the same time, I actually don't feel comfortable with this level of control from government, to be honest.
Well, I also think that you're totally disregarding the adult users, right? There could have been a bit of a plan to help ease my poor acquaintance over here. He could still get his, let's just call it his inverted commas smoke break every day, right? So, and I think that when it comes to these things, right, with regulation, you have to establish the actual threat, right? And I maybe, I am sympathetic to it as well, as someone with kids and everything like that. But at the same time, I do think that there should be some responsibility on parents as well. If we're talking about kids, right? If we're talking about kids, we're not talking about, like you said, the protections for adult users now and vulnerable peoples and cohorts and things like that. If we're talking about kids, I think that Australia in general is very, very quick to put them hand up and say, hey, Premier, Prime Minister, lock us down, right? We're begging you, lock us down, take the brave thing, people can't be trusted, you need to lock us down. For fuck's sake, mate. Just self-regulate this stuff. If you've got kids, don't let them look at the computer all alone for hours on end, right? And if they do at the right age that you establish, it's in line with the other risks and threats that they have. I kind of just, but the principle really irks me around this nanny state, and I'm not disputing that that these sites can be damaging to people, right? But I also think, I actually believe, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I probably will get crucified for this, but I think the dangers of porn in an adult context are very much overstated.
So I think what irks me a bit about this one is that there hasn't been like a policy journey that anyone's taken anyone through. It hasn't been like at least with
what
this.
I was saying.
Like
my acquaintance was not prepared for this.
Well, and so I think that the social media ban for under 16s was very hotly debated and discussed, right? It was a big conversation that many people
participated in.
it was given an opportunity to express a view, and even though they ignored all the views and just did it anyway, at least there was like a bit of a national conversation. It was like front page of the news, and every 6 p.m. news article, whatever. So let's just be clear, it's not a ban, right? This is just like age verification. But like, I think for a lot of people, that's almost the equivalent of a ban.
Yeah,
because
it's enough of a deterrent.
Yeah, and I think because people don't feel comfortable sharing that kind of, like, engaging in that way on the internet, especially not one where you don't, I mean, some of these sites are not known, aren't necessarily seen as like above board in like, there might be cybersecurity risks, there can be all manner of like identity, like this is not the street with Louis Vuitton on it, right? This is the alleyway with like,
you can buy some Louis Vuitton.
This is the part of the shopping district where you might get stabbed, right? So people don't want to have to do that, right? And I understand that, right? But I think this kind of like, I don't know. I feel like
don't leave me hanging though. So you kind of switch the subject. What about my comment? React to my comment.
What was your comment again?
That actually the dangers of pornography in the adult population are overstated. Okay,
all right. So let's tackle this one. So I think in the adult population, is it overstated? I think it does actually have real impacts on people, but not to the point of requiring regulation. So there would be no policy case to regulate access to this content for adults. But then we have to remember that the actual policy case for what is actually happening is to regulate access for those under 18. So the policy case has got nothing to do with adults. That no one is saying, an 18-year-old person cannot access this content.
Well, I'm going top down here, Andy. So first I want to establish that is overstated, because I do agree it can be a problem for people in the same way that, people are addicted to gaming or gambling and all sorts of things, right? And they abuse them, and it can have an impact on relationships and well-being. But the way that it's kind of out there in the zeitgeist at the moment is that these entertainment sites these adults' entertainment sites will absolutely take a normal man and ruin their life, and reduce them to a shell of a masturbatory golem in their room. And that's just not true.
I think that characterization is correct. Like, as in, I don't think that's what happens. But I think there might be some people who say, well, it affects like intimacy, or it affects or it even just creates this cohort of like a man that doesn't need a partner, like, because they just.
But that also ignores that a huge percentage of women use these sites too.
Yeah. So, but I think what I would come back to is I don't like, and maybe this is your point, is that a problem requiring regulatory intervention? And I think no. Like I don't think even the golem scenario. I think, well, you know what, like that doesn't harm anyone else, right? So, and well, like seriously, like
they're only hurting themselves.
But I think you've got to kind of, sometimes you might not like it, you might have a view of what it is, but like you can't regulate it out of existence just because you don't like it. Like that's not our benchmark for regulating these things, right? So then it comes down to, you have to go then to what, like, explore some of the arguments for under 18s then, right? Access for under 18s. And I think, just as an aside, I think one thing that's really interesting in this space, right, is that what I think I've observed over the last sort of probably more the last 5 years in particular, is this almost normalization of pornographic content creation. Like the fact that like it's almost respectable to be an OnlyFans creator, which is pretty much either softcore pornography or literally pornography, right? And the fact that that's almost like, maybe it's not respected, but it's certainly acceptable to, like, increasingly acceptable to do that, and almost to own it as like, hey, like I'm empowered by doing it or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's going on at the same time as now this has happened. So it's like reconciling those two kind of societal trends, where on the one hand society's saying, hey, it's okay, like, this is this empowering thing to do. And now it's like, you're a shitbag because you consume this content, right?
It's like the equivalent of those memes where you see that at the same time they introduce paper straws instead of plastic straws, that universally everyone hates paper straws because they're just ineffective. The carbon units in the atmosphere skyrocketed because China's like pumping out all this manufacturing. And this kind of feels like the equivalent, right? We're going to make life difficult for a lot of people. At the same time, like you said, all this other hypersexualization is going on with OnlyFans. Social media is like softcore porn. There's all this liberation movement and everything. And look, I go back to it again around the supervision of minors on these devices, right? Like if the overall goal is to, it's just funny to reflect on this idea of the nanny state, that often this whole slippery slope argument is made in the other direction. But it works in this direction too around when you're trying to improve something. First we start with the social media ban. Then there is a rolling side effect for other things on the internet, and then away and away and away we go. Everything that is potentially has negative consequences is fair game to review. And I just think that this is where, if you don't have any attachment or you don't have any anchor point into what a government should be doing, right, and how involved they should be in your lives, you're in free fall. Right. And then where do you draw the line? Because you can make a convincing case for a lot of things. You can take an individual who's been impacted by gaming culture, has wasted their potential playing World of Warcraft, or been bullied on the forums, and then make a case for regulation, right? And away we go. So I think that there needs to be some standards around this kind of stuff. And to your point, right, and what I was saying too, more of a discussion, right? More of a ramp to help people deal with this, and process the change on why this is important and who it's actually protecting, right?
Okay, but let's not argue this on the basis of what it wasn't implemented for. I think we should tackle it from the perspective of what it was implemented for, which is young people's access to it. And on that count, there's a couple of thoughts I've got in mind. One is your comment about it, like the impacts being overrated, or that sort of general line of attack. I'm not sure that holds either, in the sense that even if there's an addiction thing going on, right, and that addiction starts at an early age, if we don't regard it to be harmful for adults, then we shouldn't necessarily. It's not like saying, we've got to stop kids from accessing cigarettes because then they'll become lifelong smokers, right? So if smoking is not an issue, like it's not bad for your health or doesn't have impacts, then maybe we wouldn't worry about kids smoking, right? It's only the fact that being a lifelong smoker is not good for your health that we would have that attitude about you have to be over 18 to buy a pack of cigarettes, right? So with this stuff, there's that. I think there's probably what the advocates would actually say though is that it's stuff around like modeling different kinds of behavior and what's like acceptable kind of.
Well, let's have that conversation.
Practice.
Then. Right. Because I think that is, there is obviously an argument to be put forward, right, that it's due to the age and the fact that they are formative years, especially for boys, that being exposed to this kind of content can perhaps warp their worldview. And the stereotype that you kind of hear, or the messaging that you hear, is that if you're exposed to porn in that prepubescent puberty age, right, so I'm talking, from 10 to 16 or whatever, as a boy, that you develop a very, very warped sense of what sexual intimacy is, and it affects your gender relationships with the opposite sex, and it's a bit of a superconductor to being an aggressive little toxic misogynist, right? That's kind of the charge that's thrown at it, yeah? And also, on the other side, to be fair, they say that women, or girls rather, that are watching it in the same age group model the behaviors too, and they think this is what is expected of them, right? And I kind of, again, it's hard not to be sympathetic for these kind of things, especially when kids are involved. And my stance, whenever there's risk to kids, there needs to be extraordinary, evidence to back it up, to protect, and that level of protection that they deserve from adults in the community. But at the same time, I was trying to challenge it around, say, even our generation and our experience growing up, that we grew up in a generation where it was very, very common for our parents not to be very technology savvy and illiterate in some cases, I know in my case. And so it was very common for quite young boys, I don't know, even as young as 11 or 12, to be able to access some pretty extreme content online. And I don't know, I don't see many casualties of that on the face of things. You know, like I just wanted to kind of, again, this is cursory on the surface, but do you see that?
Well, I think coming back to the social media ban thing, right? Let's contrast it, right? The social media ban started with evidence of a problem and a burning platform for change, which was Jonathan Haidt's book, right? And that then kicked off the policy case for a policy response, right? Here, there's been nothing like that. There's no equivalent burning platform for change, right? And I think everyone kind of has instincts about, oh yeah, actually maybe like this stuff, maybe it does make sense, right? But I'm not so sure there is strong evidence for, well, basically for regulation of this kind. Now, there might be. So I'm not saying there is no evidence, because I haven't gone and researched it. But I guess my point, coming back to your point that you've made a few times, which is that this hasn't been established to the community. And I think they're dealing with this kind of a thing that, like, no one's going to put their head above the parapet and, like, defend this, right? So they kind of haven't had to establish it. But what I think is actually going to happen is there's a whole bunch of people who are going to feel this in some way, right? And maybe the people making these calls don't yet fully understand that actually, like, if people have to go and pay for a VPN now to access this stuff, right, that people are going to feel salty about that. And they're going to blame the government. And they might not be, like, talking about it with their friends and family in the workplace and things like that. But I don't know, there's a reason why one nation is on the ascendancy, right? It's this, people don't like the guys in charge or the people in charge. Like, they're anti-establishment now because they see the government is always fucking them over. And the irony is one nation's, like, pretty conservative, so they're probably not going to, like, get on this. But, well, you never know.
It'd be interesting to see where they fall on this thing.
But, like, my point is, like, people are wanting to stick it to both sides of politics, both major parties, which are less popular than ever, because of shit like this. And it's comes across as a little bit as elitist, I think. And they might be right. It might be like COVID again. It might be, you know, because we've probably got slightly different views on COVID. It might be one of those situations where maybe it is the right call. So I'm not saying it isn't, but I think you gotta like at least help people come to your view, or, like, especially, you know, I mean, I'm saying this kind of like reacting to the guy who you spoke to, but like I said, like, I feel my view is that this is like a bit of in principle, I don't like this. Like, this feels a little bit like Communist Party of China, like the Firewall of China kind of thing, right? It feels that. And I don't know, I hate those fucking mandatory cookie messages that you get. Like, I hate shit like that because it just reeks of government overreach, right? I don't want government on the internet. Fuck off, government.
Yeah, I mean, and this is what I mean about having some principles about this, right? Like, so I know that some of the things that I'm saying will be quite unpopular, and maybe if, you know, we have listeners that are busy parents and they say, well, it's actually unfair that I can't be watching my kid all the time on their devices, and actually this provides me peace of mind. But I mean, I just think that it's a dangerous road to go down, right? In all the big ways and small, of just outsourcing these problems to further and further reaching regulations until, you know, the journeys and the paths that you can travel online are very, very regimented and restricted, right? And that is just not the spirit of what the internet is meant to be.
All right.
So,
a hypothetical question, right? Because I think, obviously, we're two blokes talking about this topic, right? But let's take government out of the equation for a moment, right? And we should say that the decision for Pornhub to, like, block access for its Australian users was actually a decision they made. And I think that was a strategic decision that they made, right? To draw attention to this policy change because they knew how unpopular it would be. And this is their way of challenging it and maybe hoping that, there'll be people who oppose it and the government, loses its nerve and reverses it, right? But let's take that dynamic out the equation and just, like, the fundamental question of, like, the state of the universe where there is no such thing as, like, online porn, right? So it's just, magazines from the olden days or whatever. Do you think we are better off, forget the government's role, do you think we're better off an internet where no one's yet had the idea to upload pornography? Or it's actually kind of a good thing or a beneficial thing?
you know what? Again, unpopular opinion, but I think that the internet is like a good woman. You got to love her for what she is, not what you want her to be, right? And like, it has its ups and downs. Do I want to live in a place like that is always just monostat, just calm and collected, safe, but, a great place where nothing good happens, but nothing bad happens? No, that's not what the internet's meant to be. It's meant to be like America, like gory, like seeing some fucked up shit, some beautiful things, some connection. It's got to be everything all at once, all the time. That's what the internet means to me, right? And that's why it's so liberating. That's where the culture comes from, the IT culture, right? And I think that people have forgotten that, right? It's very, very important. I believe that it's akin to being able to, there are free speech elements, there are creative elements, there's hedging against a lot of government control that's built into the internet by its design, its architecture. So to answer your question, I want to be in the theme park, right? Or if I don't want to visit certain parts of the theme park, that's fine, but I want it to exist. I don't want to live in a world where people, Quentin Tarantino is not making the most fucked up, gory shit out there, right? Like that'd be like saying, let's take something like Saw, the movie Saw. Would the world be a better place if Saw never existed, right? And for those who haven't seen it, it's obviously like a very, very gory horror movie where, famously someone has to play a game to get out of a dire situation. He ends up sawing his leg off to get out of the restraint so he can leave. It's like asking whether that should exist. It's a piece of art, right? Like, it's a piece of art, and it deserves a place in the human experience, right? Whether you want to subject yourself to watching that movie or not.
I think that's a good answer, and I probably agree with it. My only kind of nuance is that I think, how like for women, right, there's this whole thing of like embrace your sexual side, right? Embrace that, right? And it's like, be proud of your like dildos and vibrators and shit like that, right?
Yes, display them proudly on a backlit wall.
Yeah. That is actually a thing, right? Like that hey, you should be like, open, right? But then
Sex and the City was very, very mainstream. HBO, baby.
But how much shame there is attached to this for men? Like, if a dude stands up to a bunch of women and starts talking about like the porn that he wanted, it's just like that kind of conversation is not
hilarious.
It's almost like embarrassing, right? I do think that there's a way for it to be healthy, but I want to caveat that with like, I think there's also a lot of stuff that's like really quite just not very good as well, and that includes like not good for the performers, like the actual performers being like, you just know that, hey, there's got to be like drugs involved here, like there's got to be some kind of...
Andy, Bonnie Blue has a Ferrari and you don't. Okay. But all I can say is, right, just to really ram that point that you're making through.
Hey, just don't use the term ram, okay?
to really
that's a bit ham-fisted.
No fisting, please. But to really just illustrate the point here, right? Dildos, dildos for female consumption. It's just this incredible icon of empowerment, right? Like you said, displayed, kind of casually mention Sex in the City, give them as a gift, totally fine, have them in the handbag, who cares, right? You go, girl. The direct equivalent, which is a fleshlight for a man, a disembodied vagina that you have sex with, for exactly the same purpose, is like, you are the filthiest degenerate in the world. Like, you are a serial killer because you want this disembodied vagina that you fuck, right? Like, is there never been more of a, like, an imbalance in the universe when it comes to these things? And look, I'm not crying poor for men's sexuality, but I'm just saying that there are some realities around this stuff, and the percentages don't lie. The internet traffic don't lie, right? And I'm purposely saying, this is not about any one person and their affinity to this stuff or how you feel about it. There are parts of me that, you can be disgusted by it but still support it, or whatever it is, right? Like, this is a whole industry of entertainment, right? And it is definitely not a one-way road to becoming a sexual predator or some kind of deviant, right? Like, I think it gets lost in that. There are a lot of, this is a very rich area. Look at someone like Andrew Tate. He kind of is the king of the manosphere, and he promotes this idea that you're a loser if you watch porn and blah, 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 all these things. These women are, like, terrible, and you're a cuck and you're a simp. And what does he do? He actually made his money by promoting porn sites and cam girls. So, like you said, there's all this grift going on about people claiming purity but then doing it. And I think that we just have to, again, bring it back to the principles of, how is the harm being done? Does it need regulation? What are you willing to outsource to the government, right? And, at the end of the day, I just feel for some of these people that are being affected by this, again, without really knowing why, right? Like, why cause all this pain without celebrating the benefits or trying to explain to people why something is happening?
So then the other angle is then as a parent. And if you remember, they used to have, I don't know if it's still a thing, but like, wasn't there a thing that you could get like a net nanny? Wasn't that a thing?
What can you?
Well, it was like, I think there was this concept. I don't know, it was very like, I don't know, it was very born of like the late 90s. So that's why I suspect it's like doesn't exist anymore. But like, it's this idea of like a net nanny, which is something some kind of software you install, or I don't know.
Oh yeah.
And it just cuts out all the filth. And like, I don't know if there's such a thing now, but like,
no, there are. There are definitely lots of kind of services that you can try to use, and I think net nanny still exists.
Because if that's a thing, you could just simply say that. Look, but then I think it's the smartphones, right? That's where it all unravels, right? Because they've got their own internet networks, and
it's just ridiculous. Now it's the government's problem, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if your child somehow breaks through this kind of system that we've set up, accesses porn, now it's the government's problem.
Yeah.
Right, and it's not. It's your problem. It's just like a family problem. Like, if it even is a problem, like I said, look back at our cohort. Are there any weird sex deviants because they saw Tub Girl too early in their formative years? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's take some bets. Probability that this is still an enduring policy at the time of the next election.
You know what? Pre-COVID, I would have said no. Now, post-COVID, I've lost my faith in the Australian fight. I think people, like I said, like that's the most depressing thing that makes me angry. The people that are calling, like, please lock us down, do the right thing, put us out of our misery. Why can't you be brave, Mr. Premier Dominic Perrottet? Like, lock us the fuck down. I think that's Australia now.
Yeah, I just think there will be no vocal opposition. I think that's the thing. There will be, like, those Batuta Advocate articles that I read out.
That's the extent of it.
It'll be comedians making fun of it. It'll be like, actually, you know what? Comedians will be the most honest on this kind of a topic, because this is like absolute content rich for them, right? And I think, there's just so much fun to be had from this, right?
I got a good one. Imagine if the government puts a task force on this, and where they end up in the solution of it is, we're going to make an ABC porn site that you can go to. You can try porn, you can trust, because 100% there to your point, there are people out there that and there'll be Karens that are just like, you sick fuck, yeah, fuck, yeah, we want to bring this back so you can whack off and care about the kids. All you can think about is your cock and whack it off. Like, it's just like, I can just see it right now that anyone who takes that stance, and it's just like, oh, you want me to cry for the poor white privileged male who's inconvenienced about like their masturbatory routine? I'm like, fuck, you think men are bad now? Take away their porn and they're fucking frustrated that they can't access their shit.
So I have a theory, right? And I actually, like, when it comes to evidence, right? My theory is that porn is actually like a release valve. It like actually prevents sexual assault.
I don't want to say that in the same way that if you took away all prostitutes, you'd have more sex crimes. Like, that is just like, you couldn't convince me that wouldn't be the case, right? Because I do, or maybe not sex crimes, but you'd have more crime, right? Like more assaults or whatever. And I just think that it's just true. It's like, this is a human nature thing, right? Like, it's an outlet for people. Like, this guy, he seemed like fucked up, man. Like, he's just like stressed out. He hasn't been to masturbate, right? And because he's been looking at porn for every day for like his whole life, he can't even like use his imagination to masturbate anymore, right? So he's probably like can't even do it, and that's not great. It'd be like, it's like the equivalent of, say, if you can't get your dick up, and then the government's just like, oh, we decided that Viagra is immoral, and we're not going to give you Viagra anymore. It's like, oh fuck, I can't have sex anymore, but I want to, right? Like, this is like, and the problem is, like, just no one gives a shit about men. Like, at the end of the day, like, this is just so far down on the list of people caring. And the irony is, it's probably like some dude that's made this call up the top, right? I don't know. This is where you need Tony Abbott, the Minister for Men, to come back.
I reckon someone like a Karl Stefanovic,
yeah, like, he's right for it.
Could run for like he'd just navigate that kind of like, yeah. Anyway,
people were so shameless though. I actually think I won't make that bet, but I'll make a bet that there'll be some kind of political figure or semi-political figure that will run on this. That'll just be like, bring back our porn. You know, like that'll be the whole thing.
Do you know who the best person in the country to like and I'd
Like, who would you want to not? It can't be someone like Barnaby because no one wants to imagine him whacking off. Right?
Nah. Bob Catter.
I can just imagine the promos of like all these porn stars like next to him, like doing collabs with him.
All right. Well, on that note, I'll let you get back to your smartphone.
It's all locked down, baby.
All right. Catch you later.